Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Zadražilová, and I would like to show you the results of the research that my colleague Pavla VIZVARY and I realized. As you can see on the screen, our topic today is the digital literacy competencies and interests of elderly people. This research followed my previous qualitative survey. Therefore, I am here today as a lecturer. However, my colleague Pavla prepared the statistical analysis of the data. Both of us will be ready for your question after this presentation. You can also find more information about our research in the full paper. Digital literacy among elderly people is an important topic in a society dependent on modern information and communication technologies. More than ever, it's essential to explore the issues and look into how to help the elderly develop their ICT skills. Many previous research have shown that the elderly do have a certain degree of information literacy and use the internet, but their skills and competencies, in simple terms, fluctuate. We also knew that seniors were interested in ICT education, but it was not clear which specific topics were most interesting to them. Digital literacy among senior citizens can be improved through education, and that is where libraries can play a crucial role. Libraries provide elderly people with a safe and comfortable environment that is easily accessible. With one library per approximately 2,000 inhabitants, the network of libraries in the Czech Republic is the densest in the world. The presented research aimed to explore digital literacy among elderly people and also their ambition to better their digital skills, and it aims to reveal the self-assessed level of digital skills among the Czech senior citizens and their preferred areas of further education provided by libraries. We designed a quantitative survey to answer specific questions about information literacy skills among the target group and their interests in education provided by libraries, as well as preferred fields of interest. Regarding to the aim of the research, we wanted to map the situation and, in cooperation with libraries, design the methodology of educational seminars for this target group. The main research questions were two. The first was how do the elderly themselves evaluate their digital literacy? And the second question was if interested in further education, what topics do they prefer? Based on these questions and based on findings from my prior qualitative research, we formulated four hypotheses, which you can see on this slide. The hypotheses were focused not only on digital literacy skills evaluation, but also on interest in educational topics. Now a few words about the methodology. We created a quantitative questionnaire that contained 27 questions divided in 4 categories. We used the categorization of digital literacy competencies according to the digital literacy strategy of the Czech Republic, which distinguish between operational, formal, informational, communication and content creation skills. We used a 5-point Likert scale for self-evaluation of the level of these competencies. Respondents had to meet two criteria: required age and have basic computer skills. We distributed the survey solely in an online form using Google Forms. Thus, only people with computer skills and access to the Internet could respond. The term elderly, as used in the paper, refers to people aged 65 years and older. We ensured this requirement by the first question about the participation's age. The questionnaire was anonymous and all questions were optional. We distributed it through personal acquaintances, organizations providing senior support, and also social networks. We used a snowball sampling when subjects of the study required future respondents. The questionnaire was available in spring 2018, and we analyzed the data quantitatively with IBM SPSS statistics software. Approximately 2 million people over the age of 65 live in the Czech Republic, and about 40% of them use the Internet. Considering these figures and the sample group size, our survey provided significant insight into the studied topic. Regarding gender, our respondents were mainly women. The average age was 71 years. As the graph shows, the majority of the respondents completed secondary education with a school-leaving certificate, closely followed by those with a university degree. Groups of participants with only primary education and secondary education without a school-leaving certificate, which were the two prevalent types of education among the population, accounted for no more than 18–19% of the respondents together. Therefore, and also due to the higher predominance of female respondents, the demography of our sample didn't mirror the population, and the research didn't meet the criteria to be representative, and we shouldn't generalize our findings. Now, let me present our findings. We created an index for each skill category and the whole sample to determine the level of self-evaluation. The first set of questions aimed at self-evaluation of the respondents' IT skills. On average, the self-evaluation was gradually getting lower throughout the categories in the order they are listed in the digital strategy. That means operational, formal, informational, and communication and content creation skill. There was no much difference between the first four categories, and it was only within the last category that evaluation showed a significant drop. The respondents assessed positively the following skills, listed here in the order from the most positively evaluated task. On the other hand, participants evaluate all three activities from the category of creating and sharing as the most problematic. The indexes I mentioned one slide ago were the variables for testing our hypothesis. In the five-item scale, the lowest number represented the best evaluation. We preserved the same scale orientation in all the indexes. Due to our first hypothesis, we assumed that the younger seniors would have a higher level of digital literacy than the older respondents. The research proved that the self-assessed level of digital skills negatively correlated to age. The younger elderly felt more competent using technology than the older ones. The correlation was significant at all skills categories except the basic computer skill. The argument may be that many of the younger respondents had previous experience using the Internet during their working life, and they retired with a certain level of information and digital literacy. Some of the respondents were still employed and were likely using the Internet as a part of their jobs, accomplishing more sophisticated tasks than the older respondents who were no longer working. The second hypothesis compared the level of skills of the elderly according to who taught them or whether they taught themselves. We distinguished three groups: respondents learning exclusively on their own, respondents taught by someone, and respondents learning to use the computer independently and trained to use the Internet. We found a significant difference between the groups. Only the category of basic computer skills was less significant. Surprisingly, and contrary to our assumption, the elderly who learned to use the technology themselves felt more confident about all the variables than the other groups. The elderly who got some help with the Internet followed, and those trained in both areas showed the poorest results. This came as a surprise because support on the part of the family is one of the key factors influencing the relationship of the elderly towards the Internet and ICT. The explanation may lie in the effort spent having learned exactly what they wanted to, knowing they would learn the very skills they really need. Most of elderly showed interest in further education, regardless of their high self-evaluation. It was about 70%. A total of 15% were not interested in further education, while 14% would like to improve their skills through education, but could not for some personal reasons. The respondents who showed interest in further education evaluated their skills as better. The other two categories distinctly overlapped in their confidence intervals. The group who could not improve their skills through education for personal reasons had the poorest results in more cases. The assumption that the respondents whose skills were poor would be more interested in further education was not confirmed. Contrarily, those who evaluated their skills well have shown greater interest in education and further improving these skills. The high percentage of respondents who wished to follow further education or had done so is closely related to the sampling bias towards higher education, which is uncommon among this age group. The elderly who tried continuing education in their adult life were more likely to attend classes on digital skills than their peers who are not interested in further education in their adulthood. The relationship between completed education and the interest in informal education is obvious. The higher the completed education, the more likely the senior citizen is to participate in workshops or lectures now and also in the future. Another set of questions specify the areas of interest for further education. Out of 37 topics, 11 were found interesting by more than a third of the respondents. They are ranked here on the slide. We categorized topics into more expensive areas: traditional skills, information literacy skills, and skills supporting active aging as e-commerce, e-communication, traveling, content creation, and so on. The respondents could also add their suggestions for topic to every category. Respondents graded traditional skills as the least interesting, followed by information literacy. The greatest number of the respondents showed interest in skills supporting active aging, as I said. It's necessary to emphasize that it was the category with the greatest number of the suggested topics. The hypothesis that the elderly prefer education in areas that support active aging rather than more traditional topics was proven valid. However, our libraries often taught just the traditional ones as Microsoft Word, Excel, and so on. The respondents also expressed interest in information literacy, and the areas of interest chosen for further education were often connected to the skills and tasks that the respondents felt least confident about or admitted not performing. So now the conclusion. The elderly who daily use the internet and other technologies find it easier to cope with the requirements the information age enforces upon them. The elderly often encounter prejudice about their level of ICT skills and internet use. Many senior citizens do nowadays benefit from technology and the internet, often more effectively than younger users. The age of computer courses for the elderly covering basic skill is long past. These should be replaced by lessons focused on information literacy and how to use the digital skills for active aging. Libraries and other institutions should provide lessons that cover areas related to active aging. The elderly found interesting modern topics, and they can prompt them to visit the library rather than a series of lectures on MS Word and MS Excel. The elderly are an attainable target group, but libraries should re-evaluate what they have to offer and put forward a more comprehensible set of lessons on digital skills. Libraries and other educational institutions should rethink their offer of lessons to reflect the current interests of the elderly. Generally, the respondents evaluate their information literacy as adequate. From all the skills mentioned in the questionnaire, nothing would pose a problem, but for content creation and accessing the reliability of information found on the Internet. These positive results can be attributed to an increasing level of information literacy. Thank you for your attention and many greetings from Czech Republic.